If you've ever gone through a divorce or if you're thinking about it, you know how challenging this could be. You're making the decision to have a divorce, or sometimes somebody makes the decision for you and it was not expected. Well, when that happens, life gets thrown into a tizzy that you never ever expected to happen in your life. So, what happens though after the divorce? What happens that's going to make it better for you later? Sometimes the divorce is a blessing in disguise. You never know what's going to happen until you get to that other side of divorce. Today, we're going to be talking about the book, The Other Side of Divorce. And hold on one second here. We're going to bring the ladies up. Uh, okay. We're going to be talking about this book, The Other Side of Divorce, Breakups That Lead to Breakthroughs. Many of us have had experiences where we didn't expect the divorce to happen. But on the other side, some things started unraveling and turning into good experiences for us. But now we're going to be talking about those good experiences, a little bit about the divorces, but mostly about the good experiences that we had on the other side. So before we really get started and dive into it, I want to start with the curator of the book, Marty Winder Adams. She brought this book to us at Action Takers Publishing to talk about, the divorce and what it's like on that other side. So Marty, why don't you share with us first how you decided to come up with this particular book title?
Well, thanks, Linda. And I have to say, the book title kind of came out of talking with my clients because I am a divorce coach. I work mostly with women. And everybody was talking about hitting that really dark spot in the divorce where you're just like, oh my gosh, should I keep going forward? This is too much. I can't deal with it. Maybe feelings of guilt and all that kind of messy stuff that goes on. And everybody kept saying, I just wish I could see my way to the other side. And so from that's where the title came from.
I love that, Marty. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for listening to your clients, because really that's what it was. You were listening and saying, you know what, there's something here. There's something here. And I'm going to bring together some women who are going to be able to share and empower others to see what it's like on the other side, that it's not always bad. Yes, it can be challenging during the time of going through the divorce. Yes, it can be challenging afterwards, but there is life after divorce. And so this is a really great message that we have to share here. I'm one of the authors. Unfortunately, I have a divorce story as well. But my life is so much better now than it was before the divorce. And so let's go. I'm going to go around the room and we're going to ask everybody a little bit about their chapter title. So when you talk about your chapter, share with us also a little bit about yourself. So first, Laura, we're going to bring up your chapter title, which is From Surviving to Thriving, Reclaiming Myself After Divorce. Why don't you share with us a little bit about that chapter title?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. It's been so fun to be part of this book because I love telling my story of being on the other side of divorce, having spent 32 years in a marriage. And so at the end of it, I figured out he was a narcissist, and that's why I struggled so much during my marriage. And so now being able to use my voice, which is what I've always wanted to do, what I've always done, was always deep in my core to help other people. Now I'm helping other people by using my voice on my podcasts and in books.
I wasn't as fast at the draw as I thought I would be.
Okay, sorry.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks for sharing your story in this book. It is a very empowering story. Before we go much further, I want to share with you that you can get your copy of the book at actiontakerspublishing.com/divorce. When you go over there, you're going to see a bunch of flags. These are to different countries where the book is offered. Click on the flag for your country and purchase the copy. If you scroll down just a little bit, a lot of our authors have given away free gifts. Go ahead and click on that link and get the free gifts from the authors. So next up we have, let's see her, hold on a second. Next up we have Mary Ann. Mary Ann, the title of your chapter is, I'm finding it here, hold on a second. Rise, Lessons in Divorce from a Mom of Children with Special Needs. So why don't you share with us a little bit about who you are and about your chapter, Mary Ann?
Thank you so much. Pleasure and honor to be here today and to be part of this exciting book to help so many women going through divorce and life after divorce. So I'm the mom of 2 kids on the autism spectrum, and I found myself facing divorce. And so I ended up trying to figure out what to do and how to be successful in terms of advocating for my kids and their needs. And I did come out the other side, but I decided that I want to help other people because it took me so much time, money, and effort to get to that point. I figured people shouldn't have to recreate the wheel and try to figure this out on their own when they have a child with special needs as well. So I came up with a framework. I thought about what was important to me and what I did my divorce to have a good result. And so I came up with the acronym RISE, where each letter stands for different things to do and think about as part of your divorce. And so I took that and kind of explained that throughout my chapter so that you can look at divorce not just as something negative or something that's impacting you now, but how to plan for the future for yourself and for your family.
Awesome, Marianne. Thank you again for sharing your message, your story, and getting it out there to help other people, especially those with special needs situations, because that's what throws in a whole nother wrench, right, into going through a divorce. So thank you again for sharing that. Now, next up we have Gina. Gina, go ahead and unmute yourself. And let me see, the title of your chapter is My Journey to Peace. Gina, why don't you share with us a little bit about yourself and then talk a little bit about your chapter?
Sure. I'm so excited to finally get my ideas out in the world that help me get to the other side of the divorce. I appreciate all of you. So for me, it was really finding myself again. I was a stay-at-home mom, and it was the financial crisis of 2008. And, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I really didn't know my own identity. So in my chapter, I talk about 13 things that helped me get to the other side. And they varied from all different things, from knowing my numbers to practicing gratitude. And it just helped me to realize what I can do to help others get to the other side. And I think that's the most important thing. I found my purpose after my divorce of helping other people understand their finances as a certified divorce financial analyst. So I think you can start again and live a really full and rich life as you transformation into the next phase of your life.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Gina. I love it. And next up we have Leslie. Leslie, go ahead and unmute yourself and share with us a little bit about you, as well as a little bit about your chapter.
Hello. Thank you so much for putting this on and for having us all here today, and Marty for putting this together. Such an important book. My chapter is about Phoenix rising. And if you know the history of the Phoenix, it's about rising, burning brighter from the ashes of your old life. And really, that's what my chapter is about, to understand that this is just a change and that you can rise, you can burn brighter. It's really about starting to learn how to take care of yourself, put, more focus on you, and knowing that it's not selfish, it's essential for you and for everyone that you love, your children, those that you love, and to burn brighter for all the other people looking for inspiration and hope, which has led me to working with wonderful women who are just ready to light their own fires, to fire up their own phoenix, and to burn bright and shine their light in the world.
Awesome. I love that. Who wants to light their own fire? I do. Come on, baby, light my fire. I'll light my own fire. I'll light my own fire. Thank you very much. Okay, next up we have a Melissa. Let's see, where is Melissa? Right here. Melissa, go and unmute yourself and share with us a little bit about your chapter and who you are, from frozen to fired up. Light my fire, light my fire.
Right. And I couldn't have followed a better person in what I do, because my chapter is all about going from that place where a lot of us feel frozen in fear over what's going to transpire after we get a divorce, or even contemplating divorce. And this was very important for me to write my story, because I had talked to a lot of people, mentored a lot of men and women about how to start the divorce process or help them when they were contemplating the divorce process. And this was so much fun, because one of the pieces of my own journey after I got divorced, my intuition began to open up tremendously. And 7-8 years ago now, I was guided to be a firewalk instructor, to get in my car, go to Texas, and walk on fire over 120 times. And who would have thunk that this would be a part of my journey? But I think what it does is shows women what is possible for us and what we are capable of after we make that great, big, huge, overwhelming decision, sometimes so frozen and scared, to having a life the way I do now of feeling so much love and abundance and finding so many communities and tribes of people to share my heart with. And it's all just amazing now. And I'm really super grateful that Marty had this idea, because I think it's awesome. And I can't wait, for everybody to get it in their hands.
Awesome. Fantastic. I'm not sure about the fire walking thing, but maybe something for me to look at later. I don't know. Yeah, thank you for that so much. Next up, we have Marty. Marty, go and unmute yourself. Now, Marty is the curator of the book. And again, you can get your copy by going to actiontakerspublishing.com/divorce. And there's also some free gifts over there. So go get your copy today. The book just hit #1 bestseller in women's spirituality in the US. Yay. Congratulations, ladies. And we're looking forward to hit #1 in other countries as well. So if you're in another country, especially if you can go ahead and hit that button and buy a copy, that would be fantastic. Now, Marty, go ahead and share with us. Let's see, the title of your chapter is Life Lessons Learned in Finding Out Who I Am. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your chapter and a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for jumping on this project. You were all like, yes, I'm in. And I'm just so honored to have all these authors in the book, because they're phenomenal women. They have amazing stories. And so that was a little bit off topic, and I'm a little flustered with this #1 bestseller thing. I'm kind of confused right at the moment what I should say. But my chapter on the life lessons, because when I went through my divorce, I really thought of it as a failure. I didn't have a bad marriage. There wasn't many of the complications that a lot of women are facing when they get out of a relationship, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't right. And so when I left the relationship, I had a lot of feeling of failure, that I can't do this, that I'm not good enough, that I don't deserve to be in a relationship or find happiness, or whatever the crazy thoughts I was having in my head. And then a friend of mine really sat me down and said, look, you need to stop thinking about this as a loss or a failure, and start thinking of it as an opportunity to learn, so that you get better as a person, as an individual, but also as somebody going into a relationship. So I made that my focus. And when I made that shift, it really changed the way that I was thinking about myself after divorce. And it opened up a lot of opportunities for me to make decisions that if I'd have been stuck in that negative mindset, I don't think I would have made. So that's what my chapter is all about: reframing this, and what are the 3 key things that I focused on in my growth post-divorce that helped me get to where I am today.
Awesome, Marty. Thanks for sharing that. Everything that you, things that all of you ladies said, brought up different thoughts and questions. And I'll be asking some of these questions. But before we go there, I'm going to do what I don't normally do, is I'm going to talk about my chapter. Normally, as the publisher, I don't usually talk about myself or as my chapters and stuff. But I'm going to do that. So bear with me as I learn how to spotlight myself, and then to share the book up here. So the title of my chapter is From Shadow to Sunshine, Finding Light After Darkness. Now, I grew up in a very volatile, abusive, alcoholic household. And in that household, I was in the shadows, because kids were better seen than heard. And I know a lot of us have this experience as children. That mentality was carried into my first marriage. And in my first marriage, there was a lot of abuse. And that abuse made me stay silent, scared, and hidden. So after my divorce, which, I didn't know what was going to happen after that divorce, but I made a decision, and I knew that in that moment, that was the right decision for me to make. And that decision was to leave my ex-husband, because I was repeating my mom's life. And that decision, I didn't know how much that would carry me through the rest of my life, but it took many decades for me to come out of those shadows and into the sunshine. My nickname, Linda Sunshine. It took many decades for that to happen, but I had to take those steps. I had to take the steps to make them happen. And so life on the other side of divorce can take a while sometimes. Sometimes it could be immediate. But the thing is that I believe that if we believe it's the right thing for us to do, we must do it. We must do it as soon as possible so that we can start to live our better life later. So make that jump. If you're thinking like, I'm not sure what to do, reach out to somebody like Marty. She can help you to get to that other side of divorce. We have, many of our people here today can help you with that. But find help to get through that divorce so that you will be able to get to that other side and live the life that you're meant to live. So that's what I wanted to share about my chapter. And again, we're talking to the ladies of the book, The Other Side of Divorce, Breakups That Lead to Breakthroughs. So question for you all, and you can raise your hand so I know who wants to respond to the question. And if you all want to respond to the question, we'll just make sure the answers are very short so that we can have everybody participate. So this, something that Marty mentioned, she said, I thought I was a failure. So if you experienced that kind of thought, or you thought that other people would think you were a failure for going through your divorce, I would like for you to speak to that. So if anybody would like to speak to it, just raise your hand. So we've got Laura and Gina. Marty, did you want to speak to that a little more? And Marty, okay. So Laura, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. Like, what was that like for you going through divorce and feeling like either people were going to think you were a failure or you were going to think you're a failure?
Yeah, even though I was married for 32 years and I felt like I gave it my all, it did feel like a failure to me because I thought we just can't figure it out. We can't work it out. And then I was in a religious community that really, was telling me to stay and pray and just keep going and it'll be okay. And this is what you're supposed to do. But that was really hard for me to continue staying when I didn't realize I was being abused because it was psychological, but I knew something was wrong. And so it was hard to walk away from that, but I had to choose me and I had to choose my mental health. And truly I had to choose my life because I didn't want to be on the earth anymore. So to me, even though all those things are happening, swirling in my mind, I still felt like a failure. And other people around me were like, oh, could you have tried harder? Things like that. Things that, why are we saying that to people? In any situation, 32 years, I tried, tried as best as I could. You got to have two willing partners. And there was only one.
That's a great point there, right? You tried 32 years, and those who are saying things like that, they're not living it. They don't know what's going on inside there. So I think that's a challenging thing for us, as human beings, is as we're going through our lives, people say, you should this, you should that, shoulding all over us, not realizing what we're going through, whether it's in the house or mentally inside our own house that we carry around with us 24/7. There's crap going on, and people don't understand it all. So I'm glad that you finally made that decision at 32 years and moved on, and your life is completely changed, transformed, and you're in such a better place now today, which makes the planet a much better place. Right? So that's the thing, is if we really look at it from the grand scale, who we are, who we're walking around as, it's part of the planet, and we're making the planet a better place or not. And if we're miserable, we're not adding to the goodness of the planet. So thank you so much for sharing that, Laura. So next up, Gina, go ahead and unmute yourself, Gina, and share with us about failure.
Well, I think it's similar to Laura's story. I was the good little Catholic girl. I did everything right. We kind of didn't even get married. We didn't live together or anything like that. And then I tried the marriage counseling. I tried personal counseling. I tried everything for us to get together. But like she said, I realized that it could still practice my faith as a Catholic. I could still find my identity without being somebody's wife. And I think that was the key for me. But I felt very guilty, especially when I came from a family where my parents were high school sweethearts, and they stayed, they're 58 years they celebrated this year of being married. So I think it was like my family, my religion, and everything making me feel that way. But at one point I realized it's what I feel, not what other people feel. And that's what I have to honor.
Good for you, stepping into your power, right? Like saying, no, I mean, this is what other people are thinking and feeling, but I don't need to agree with that. And that's the thing, is we don't need to agree with what other people are saying or doing in our lives. Again, they don't know what we're going through. So congratulations on making that decision and sticking with it, Gina. Congratulations. That's amazing. Okay, next up, we have Marty. Go ahead and speak to failure regarding divorce, Marty.
Well, and so I think I just want to kind of tag on a little bit with what Laura and Gina have said, in that nobody knows how hard people work in their relationships. And I can tell you, I mean, I've been doing divorce coaching for a couple of decades in one form or another, and I've been mediating for almost 30 years. I don't see anybody that comes into these dissolution of relationship, dissolution of marriages, and says, oh, wow, I just want to do this because I just feel like it today. That people go through a lot. And when we try so hard to make something work that doesn't work, or if we stay in something that's bad and be unhappy, I think we're really doing a disservice to ourselves, to the other person. And I'm going to bring this up here. I know the other people haven't, but if there's kids involved, living in a toxic relationship household is not good. And toxic doesn't necessarily just mean fighting. It can be passive aggressive. It can be non-communication. It can be, just that tension that's always in the home. So there's a lot of research around this, but feeling like you're a failure because a relationship falls apart, I think we really need to work on eliminating that from something we do in judging other people, in judging other relationships, because I think if we just show a little compassion to everybody, we can help remove the stigma of divorce, which does still exist. And you are not a failure if your relationship doesn't work, because like Laura said, it takes two people to make it work. And if the other person doesn't want to do it, it's not going to happen.
Wow. Wow. What a great message. And I love what all of you have to share related to this topic. What I want to talk about next and is because mentioned something, Marty, that made me realize, see, my parents were together for 55 years. And when my dad passed away, my mom's first words after 55 years were, thank God the bastard is dead. After 55 years. And so that's what I grew up in. And that's what I thought I needed to do. And I'm so glad I left that first marriage, because I didn't want to emulate that. And so my mom stayed together originally for the kids. That was the reason she stayed with my dad. And then it became for the grandkids, right? So there was always a reason to stay together. And it was always about other people, not about herself and what was going to be best for her. So I'd like to talk about that topic. Like, let's talk about the, for lack of a better term, selfishness of looking at ourselves and saying, what do we deserve? What do we deserve? So if you'd like to speak on this topic, go ahead and raise your hand, because I don't want to just call on everybody. And so I got Leslie and Melissa. Okay, Leslie, go ahead. And I'm going to spotlight you here. Go and unmute yourself. And let's talk about the selfishness and or selflessness of doing what's best for you.
This is definitely a topic that I love to talk about, but I want to go a little bit even deeper into this, following on what Marty talked about when we have kids and thinking we're doing this for the kids. And part of what helped me to move forward in making the choice to leave my 21-year marriage was having a conversation with my 16-year-old who was having troubles with a boy. I'd given everything to them, to my marriage, to everybody around me, my work. I'm a psychiatric nurse. And we were having this conversation that she was giving up all the things that she loved: singing, dancing, doing things she wouldn't normally do to be in that relationship. And of course I told her, if they love you or if they care about you, they want you to be everything that you want to be. They don't want you to give things up. And yet that's what I was modeling to her and to my other two girls. And it was a big light bulb moment for me when I was thinking I was teaching them that they were the most important people in the world and that they should be all that they can be. I was also teaching them that when you love someone, you give up yourself. that you sacrifice yourself for their happiness, and that's not what I wanted. And so in being what I thought was selfless, I was actually teaching my kids that they should do the same thing. They should give themselves up. And so that's ultimately what helped me to make the choice to move forward. I wanted them to live fulfilled, passionate, inspired lives. And for them to do that, I had to be the example in starting to figure out who I was, what I love, who I like, all of those things. And it was this, really eye-opening experience for me, because as I did that, my girls started to grow into that as well and started to understand their importance. So in me taking those steps to be selfish, or to start just looking at what's important to me, what I love, what I want to do, I also inspired them to do that for themselves too. So it's really twofold. I might be being selfish, or I might feel like my self-care is so important that sometimes I have to say no. Actually, often I say no. I'm also teaching them to do the same thing so they aren't stuck in that same trap that was passed down to me for generations. So really important.
Wow, that's so powerful. And just to remind ourselves how much our kids model after us. So if we're teaching them these bad habits, these bad mannerisms, whatever, we're teaching them that. And so they're going to emulate us, for the most part. Eventually they might say, buck the system and say, I don't want to be like that, but they may not. And so we have so much power when we walk around in our households of who we are and how we're being, that we can teach them how to be empowered with who they are, but then we can also hinder them. So thank you for sharing that, Leslie, and congratulations for you coming to that realization, before, like my kids were like 35 and 36 before I came to that realization. And so you're able to, help them at a much younger age. So congratulations. That's so fantastic. Next up, Melissa, go ahead. We're talking about, selfishness versus, selflessness, really, in relation to, relationships and divorce. And go ahead, Melissa, love to hear from you.
Thank you. And I love everything that's being said, and I will piggyback on that. And it's funny, this seems to be a theme that I've been talking about. I did a video yesterday on my Facebook page about making yourself a priority. And that was one of the things that I didn't do. And I laugh now, and I will always say I was the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. I was a mother and a wife and a friend and a daughter and a sister who was constantly giving, 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 giving. And I was the one getting so depleted. And again, as was said by others, what was I modeled? I was modeled by my mother and her mother and her mother. I was modeled how to not make myself a priority, how I always came last. And I wanted everybody to see my life as the picture perfect life, when inside I was the one really dying and falling apart, but I was keeping it all together. I was putting on a really good show because that's what my mother always did. And she stuffed her feelings with my father. And I learned to do that as well. And so one of the things when I left my marriage and I was alone and had time because my children were with their father, I really started to delve into me, into what did Melissa want? What was I going to do now in my life? Because before I got married, I was a go, go, go kind of person, very social, very extroverted. And I was very in my masculine energy. And what I learned after I got out of my marriage, I learned that I needed to find my femininity as well. And one of those pieces was that nurturing part of myself and making myself important and what I thought important. And that took a lot of work. And actually, I was in a program, and I still am, called Al-Anon. And I was watching other women model self-care. I didn't see my mother model it. I saw these other women who had learned to take care of themselves and learned to make themselves a priority and their spirituality. And I started to understand the value of doing that. And what ended up happening then was when my children would come to my home and we would do things, I would help them nurture that piece of themselves as well. And I also would actually push them to do those things that maybe were fear based somewhat, but would also teach them how they could find themselves and not lose themselves in someone else, because codependence was such a big part of my life. And I did not want my children to take on that codependence and build their relationships around what I had learned didn't work for me. So thank you.
Wow, congratulations. I love that, just the whole message of self-care and, something that wasn't modeled in my home and may not be modeled in a lot of homes. And so I love that you all are sharing, similar yet different messages here. There's two questions I have for you. I'll share the first one first. And, so whether you decided to leave or your spouse decided to leave, I would like to talk about this topic because there are a lot of people watching here right now, a lot of people who are going to read the book, who are going to be like, well, I'm not sure if I should leave. I'm not sure how to leave. I don't know how to make that decision. I don't have support in my life. And so I would love for you to talk about that moment. That was whether you were like, you know what? I've decided we're done, or your spouse came to you and said, I've decided we're done. If you guys can go back to that moment and tell us, what was that like, and what was like that tipping point that helped you to make the decision? So I would, or that decision come at you. So I would love to go and ask everybody this one, and I'm going to keep you all on the screen. And so I'm going to start with you, Melissa. Go ahead and unmute yourself and share with us that moment. That was that decision. We're having a divorce.
So mine became a surrender moment. And I knew I was walking down the hallways of my home one morning. I woke up early and I really was in a space of thinking to myself, I really don't like who I am. And I don't like my husband either. And I kneeled down to say some prayers and to surrender in that moment. And from that moment forward, I was the one who chose to leave. I was the one who knew in my heart, and I was guided intuitively and by my what I call goddess energy. And I was guided to make that decision. And I didn't even think I wanted to get a divorce because of the stigma attached with that. But I also knew that everybody was suffering and I was suffering a lot. And so from there, I made that decision to contact a lawyer, and I was terrified to do that, by the way, terrified. And once I did it, though, the doors kept opening. And 4 months later, I was out of the house. And by 8 months after that, I was divorced.
Wow, wow. Congratulations stepping into it and going with it. I think that could be a lot, very challenging for a lot of people. So thank you for sharing that. Next up, Laura, go ahead and unmute yourself and share with us like that moment that divorce was, looming there.
Well, I get asked this question because I think people want a formula, but there is no formula, is there? It is a very much like an awakening. It was a slow awakening for me. I come at it from the perspective of I was married to a narcissist and I had the reverse discard. He made my life so miserable that one day I decided I had to leave because I just didn't even want to be alive anymore. And there was just a moment where he actually approached me about a divorce, but wouldn't say it and forced me to say it. But this is the thing I tell people, because many people do want a formula, or they want to know, how do I know it's time to go? And there is no formula. And so what I always say is, if nothing changed today in your life, because we can't change anyone else, would you be happy living like this for the rest of your life? And I had to ask myself that question. And the answer was, I could not. I could not do one more day the way I was living, because if my parents have been married for a million years and they're still alive, and if his parents are still alive, was I going to do another 40 years with him? No. And so that's how I decided. And you can use that for anything. If nothing changed today, can you live like this? And that's the question I had to ask myself, and how I made the decision.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That's a formula in and of itself, I think. So thank you for sharing that. Next up, Gina.
Mine was a long process too. I mean, I remember having the divorce attorney's name in my pocketbook from a friend for about several months. But I was, like I said, very strong in my faith. And I remember one night praying. He was in another part of the house praying, give me a sign. I said, I'm going to try one more time to talk to him. And unfortunately, he was on the phone with his girlfriend. And if that's not a sign, that's a sign. And I think I needed that jarring moment to know that I wasn't the priority in his life and that the only person that could get herself out of it was me. So, and I think, and I don't regret that because I think that's just who I am. I've got to have that significant sign, but sometimes it's all those little things like not cooperating in marriage counseling or not telling you the truth, or you get those intuitions. And I think Melissa and Laura both have said that you get those inner feelings in your gut to direct you what you need to do as your next step.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing there because listening to our intuition is something that we may not listen to because we don't want it to be the right answer. And so we kind of resist it. But yeah, listening to our intuition, I think, is a very important piece, especially as women. We have that women's intuition they talk about. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Mary Ann, go ahead and unmute yourself and share with us that moment of the divorce decision.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So the divorce wasn't my initiating, but when I got past the initial shock and disbelief and anger, I knew I had to come at this as positive way as I could to make sure that my children, being special needs, would be taken care of in the future. So everything I did in my divorce was with that vision in mind. And my ex used to say I always had to have a project. What's became my project to make sure that I got through this and my kids got through this in a healthy, positive way. And so I'm proud to say that we did get a great result. And now I'm honored to help other people do the same. But like Gina was saying, when people show you who they are, believe them. There are maybe signs over the years that I chose not to pay attention to. But when the divorce did happen and things were different, I felt a weight being lifted off of me because something that I didn't realize was unhealthy for me was actually taking place during my marriage. And so it ended up being a positive thing. And now, as we talked about before, being a good role model for our kids. And I even had one son say to me, the one who's more verbal, say, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you. You're like a different person than you were before the divorce." So that to me makes it all worth it.
Yeah, well, that's big because our kids are seeing what's happening, even though we're trying to hide it. They see it and they feel it. And so I think that's such a great testament there, Mary Ann. Thank you for sharing that. Next up, Marty, go ahead and unmute yourself and share with us that moment of the divorce decision.
Well, I'm trying to think. People have asked me this before. I don't know that there was a moment for me. Um, Honestly, if there was a moment, I'm going to say this kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, but it was like 2 seconds before we got married. Like there was this sense of we're really good friends, but this is probably not the step we need to take right now. Right. And we had 5, like I said, relatively good years together. And, but for me, it was about 18 months of, do I want to stay in this relationship when I know there's not this wonderful future that we're looking forward to? Or do I want to go through the divorce and try something different, or, spend some time maybe reestablishing myself and doing some of the things that I want to do? So that decision took about 18 months. And I am the one that filed for the divorce. And I know that, that triggered a whole different series of problems. But I do really think that you have to listen to yourself and you have to know. I love Laura's question. I wish I'd have had it. If I had to stay in this for the next 40 years, would I be happy? I would have absolutely said no. But I think I had to go through the thinking part of it to be able to make the decision. So, yeah, that was my. So I can't pinpoint a moment, but I can pinpoint a time period in my life where that was something I thought about a lot.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. I had a friend who, 10 minutes before she's getting married said, I don't know if this is going to work. And it didn't. They were divorced 8 months later, but she had this guilty feeling like I had to go through with it because the the other parents paid for the wedding and they spent, tens of thousands of dollars. And that's what made her keep going through it. And so sometimes, we have this guilty feeling of doing whatever we're doing for who other people or what have you. But, we have to listen to that. We really do. I think it's important for us to listen to that. And then next up, Leslie, go ahead and share with us, that moment of the divorce decision.
I'm, like so many have shared, there was this period kind of, and it was many years where I knew we weren't fully happy. We weren't, doing really well for each other. But I stayed because it's what I was supposed to do for the kids. And it was that moment I had that conversation that I shared earlier with my eldest, where I realized really the impact that me staying married was having on my kids. And I really had to take a really good look at myself, and just like Melissa shared, surrendered in that moment into the direction that I was actually being intuitively given, and made that choice to move on and make a life for myself and my girls. And really that's what it was. It was in that moment I knew what we were doing was not healthy for us or for our children, and I needed to change it.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Again, thinking about others, how it affects our lives with our marriages does affect others. For me, I remember that exact moment. I was standing in our apartment and we had two babies, a 4-week-old and a 14-month-old. We had only been married for less than 2 years. And I just looked at him and I said, if you want these kids growing up hating you as much as I hate my dad, then I'll stay with you. What a ridiculous statement to say. But I was so angry in that moment. And I remember it verbatim, and I remember it just as if I'm standing there right now. And so I ended up, when he left to work that day, I ended up picking up a diaper bag, a purse, and 2 kids, and I walked out. I didn't have a car, so I literally walked out. But I knew that I didn't want to live that same life that my mom had lived for all those years. And I knew that for me, living staying with him for the kids was the wrong decision, because I always felt that my mom staying with my dad for the kids was the wrong decision. So it's almost interesting how, emulating my mom to the opposite is what I needed to do in order to live my life the way I wanted to live it. Was it scary? Yes. But it was scarier staying with him. I like to say, I had 2 fears, the fear of leaving, the fear of staying. I weighed them out and I said, the fear of leaving is less fearful than the fear of staying. So that was why I made that decision to leave. And so life moves on. We learn from our lessons from the various situations that we have in our lives, no matter if it's, with another person, whether it's going to school, whether it's, having children or not children. There's so many different things for us to learn from. What are those lessons that we're learning? So my last question for you ladies is this, oh shoot, I wrote it on a wrong note here. How do you decide what you want for you out of your life? Because as you're facing that decision, whether they came to you and said, like, we're going to have a divorce, or you made that decision to have the divorce, how do you decide after that what you're going to do? So I'm going to ask everybody. And so interpret the question however you want. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm not asking a specific question because I just wanted to keep it open for your interpretation. So I'm going to go backwards this time. So we'll start with Leslie. Go ahead, Leslie, unmute yourself.
This is a big question. I think sometimes can be so overwhelming for women when we're coming out of a marriage, and so much of our, our personalities and our whole selves are kind of built around that. And the only thing that I can say is one small step at a time. To say you have to have it all figured out, it's too much. It's starting to just take that one small step. It's reaching out for help. I know we've heard this a lot, but it's reaching out to somebody. But it's also just one small step at a time. It's starting to say, what would I like to do? What would I like in this instance? Even if you even think of supper, I always made, this or that for the kids in my family. What would I like to eat? right? Just starting to do small things for yourself, but taking that one step at a time and really just having that time to do that. And I know lots of people say, well, I got to worry about kids or everything else going on. Small moments of quiet time can be 30 seconds here and 2 minutes there and 5 minutes there. And it's really taking that time to just be quiet and really just listen, because you're smart. Your intuition is there, and you'll know. But just one small, you don't have to have it all figured out. One small step at a time.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Leslie. I'm still trying to figure it out. Okay. Still trying to figure it out after all these years. Marty, what is, I don't even remember my question, but hopefully you ladies do.
Yeah.
Marty.
That's okay. I think Leslie did such a nice job. Well, my answer is going to kind of dovetail with Leslie's, although it's going to sound initially like it's the exact opposite. I say to people, dream as big as you want to dream. So many times, we are, like Leslie said, so focused on the day to day. And especially when you're going through a divorce, it's a very emotional, it's a very tough time. There's a lot of decisions that have big long-term implications. So please, please, please don't forget about, remember when you were a kid and you were just laying on your bed at night and you were just like, you were going to be an astronaut and you were going to be a veterinarian and you were going to be a published author in a best-selling book and all these kind of things. Then as we get older, we start saying, no, we can't, no, we can't, no, we can't. We don't have that certification. We don't know this. We don't know that. So just lay down in your bed at night and dream big. And then, like Leslie says, start looking at what is the smallest step you can take to start working towards that dream. And then celebrate each and every success. And if you find you're going down a wrong path, turn around, make a U-turn, make a pivot. The more that you get out of your comfort zone, the more comfortable you're going to be in finding yourself.
Oh, that's a writer downer. Let's say that again, the more uncomfortable.
I can't remember what I said. I am sorry.
Does anybody remember what she said?
I think I said the more uncomfortable you get, the more you have a chance to really look at yourself and see who you are. That's not the same way, but that was the intent.
That was close. That was close. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Marianne, go ahead and share.
Yeah, when you ask that question about what do we want out of the divorce and life afterwards, that I think struck a nerve, because I think a lot of people maybe put themselves last. They put themselves there, especially as a special needs mom. We put our kids first a lot, and everybody else and everything that has to be done to make sure that our kids are healthy and taken care of and address their needs that are 24 hours sometimes. And so that's a hard question for a lot of people, is what do we want out of this and how do we see ourselves in the future? But it's important to remember who we are and that we are worthy of whatever life has in front of us. And we can make choices. We can make decisions to better ourselves and better the situation for ourselves and our family. And so that's the message I would share, is that you may have lived and focused on doing everything for other people, but now is a time to also put you first. Maybe you can have your kids next to you in the front seat, but you're important too. And don't forget that.
Such a great message. I totally agree with that. And thank you for sharing that. Gina, you're next.
I think for me, and I say this a lot to my clients that I help with, especially when it comes to the children, is how do you want to see yourself in 5 years after you've been through this process? I remember my 19-year-old son saying to me, Mom, I really feel good that you and Dad didn't put me in the middle. And I'll tell you, that was 5 years after my divorce. And that meant the world to me. And I think it's just those little things of seeing yourself in the future. What do you want to project into the world? Do you want happiness? For me, my favorite thing to do, self-care, is to dance. I mean, I will turn on music in my house and just dance it out just to relieve stress sometimes. But everybody has what's important to them. But I think just kind of visualize yourself a few years ahead and see how you can best handle the circumstances you're in today.
That's great. Yeah, just futurizing yourself. Yeah, that's a great message there. Thank you for sharing. Next up, Laura.
This is such a good question. you come out of your divorce, maybe you're foggy headed like I was, and you just sort of like, I have all this freedom. What do I get to do next? But when you've been like I was, emotionally abused, that where you feel like, I don't even know what to do. And I remember that these words came out of my mouth was, I called my friend who's a coach, and I love that. I think it was Leslie talked about that. There are people around you who can help you figure out what it is that you want to do next. It doesn't have to be starting a business, but what is it that you want to do? But I said to my friend, can you help me dream again? I don't even know what that means. And she said, sure. And so we just started picking it apart. I just had it deep in my soul. What do I want to do? Did not know it was to become a speaker, a podcaster, and an author. Didn't know it was going to be that. But, the thing is, you have a dream inside of you. And when you're laying in bed, right? Like we said, when you're laying in bed, you're thinking about that thing. Oh, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have been a painter. I wish I would have danced. I wish I would have whatever. Guess what? You still get to do it. And I do that too. I help women dream again, because we get to midlife and we go, is it too late? I just got divorced at 55. Is it too late for me? And it's not.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, you're never too old to start something new. Never too old. Only in your mind. So don't let that stop you. Next up, Melissa, go ahead and share with us.
Well, I think one of the most simplest and easiest things that you can do is make a list of every little thing that you want to do. And someone recommended this to me years ago. And it was even like jumping in the puddles in the street and spending time reading a book just for pleasure. And I know pleasure is something that women also, we don't put ourselves in a place where we're just relaxing and being in a place of pleasure. And that was something I had to go back to and think a lot about. And I loved what Leslie says, because I also would tell my clients, just take a baby step. Just do one thing today that makes you feel like, oh, I made an impact on myself doing something for me, just something small. Gratitude list is another thing that I highly recommend people do, because it starts you to see, okay, what I'm grateful for now, and then what is it that I'd love to see more abundance in my life about. And I will also share that listening in my Al-Anon recovery group, when I would go and specifically listen to these women talk about their lives, what they had done to get where they were or what they had let go of, I started to pay attention. And then when I would go out into my regular daily life at the grocery store, the library, or wherever I was with my children, anything that came into me, which resonated with me, I would act upon, whether it was a song that, spurred my emotions about something, whether it was someone saying something to me and I would think, oh my gosh, wow, I really like that. And then I would also push my edge. And that's one of the things I do in my coaching is I push people's edge for what they want. And I then hold space for them to get it. And I think that's what women are really good at. We're really good listeners, and we are really good at holding space for other women when we are healthy and centered within ourselves. And meditation, I will add another one. Meditation for me was hugely valuable and very important at me coming to a space where I realized what I wanted. And there are so many facets to what we want. It's not just what we want physically in our bodies or in our periphery, our little environment. It is mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, financially. It is all of that. And it will unfold as we allow and receive, because women don't know how to receive either. So we have to be in that space where we can receive and want to receive what we want. And it will come to fruition if we allow it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that and so many different nuggets from all of you. And I want to thank you for being in this book. What is it? I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. The Other Side of Divorce, Breakups That Lead to Breakthroughs. You can read these women's stories in here as well as other women. There are 19 total stories of going through a divorce and how they had a breakthrough on the other side of that divorce. You can get your copy of the book at actiontakerspublishing.com/divorce. While you're there, you'll also see free gifts from the authors. Cash in on those free gifts. Again, it's actiontakerspublishing.com/divorce. Ladies, I want to thank you so much for, being part of this, sharing your messages. It takes a bunch of vulnerability in order for us to share these stories. So I want to thank you for stepping up and saying, you know what, I do have a story to share, and I think somebody will learn something from it. So I want to thank you all for doing that. Marty, thank you for bringing the book to Action Takers Publishing. We're here to help you to get your messages, your stories into the world to make a greater impact on the planet. So with that, we're going to end this book launch kickoff event. Again, #1 in women's spirituality. Congratulations. And we're looking to become #1 in the other categories as well as in other countries. Everybody, thank you so much, and you have a beautiful day.